He's now a consultant for large organisations like World Health Organization and even for the EU. And this is what he wrote in 1990 in his book called Future Wealth. He said, unlike both the capitalist and socialist versions of conventional economics, the 21st century economy must be based on recognition that people are moral beings whose freedom should not be narrowly bound by impersonal parameters laid down by either the market or the state. He said the new economics must transcend the materialistic assumptions of a conventional economics, that economic life is reducible to production and consumption. And I'm going to continue quoting. He said, it must reinterpret the manipulative concern of conventional economics with the production and redistribution of wealth and allocation of resources, which is all mainstream economics talks about. It has to convert that into something else, into a developmental concern with how to enable people to meet their needs, develop themselves, and enhance the resources and qualities of the natural world. Finally, David Coulton, again equally interesting. This guy worked for years with the US Agency for International Development. But it was his very experience with working for US aid that actually made him realize that the way things are going is just not working, because he was seeing firsthand that as much as they worked to alleviate the suffering of people across the globe, it just got worse. So eventually he left. And what he said is that he's now a best-selling author of a huge number of books on corporations and how they function. He's considered the leader of, one of the leaders of the anti-globalization movements. And he's got a whole set of organizations and movements with millions of people around him, kind of reading his books and trying to take his ideas into the mainstream. And this is what he says. He says that the global economic system is basically based on these kind of unproven, reductionist and materialist assumptions about life and nature, which he says almost amount to a fundamentalist theology. He says the economic profession serves almost as a priesthood. It champions values that demean the human spirit. It assumes an imaginary world divorced from reality. Money is its sole measure of value in its practices. They advance policies that are deepening social and environmental disintegration everywhere. The crucial point here is his statement. It assumes an imaginary world divorced from reality. The current global system is not based on reality. The assumptions underlying this system, the assumptions about human nature, the assumptions about the natural environment, have nothing to do with reality. These are institutionalized mythologies. Mythologies that were associated with an old way of thinking, an old mechanistic science that has now been superseded by a new science across different disciplines, in physics and economics, in medicine. And I want to close on this, one final point that you might consider rather obscure, which is physics. I threw this in at the end. I really, really wanted to talk about this, just because it's something that really interests me personally. And there wasn't any space, but I thought, what the hell, let's throw it in. You might think, what the hell, why am I talking about Bell's theorem, you're wondering? Well, Bell's theorem in quantum mechanics, it was a mathematical demonstration by a physicist, John Stuart Bell. And it's been confirmed by a long series of experiments, especially those by a guy called Dr. Alain Aspect in the 1970s and 1982. Now what Bell's theorem showed, and I'm not going to go into the details because of time issues, but what they showed was that subatomic particles, once they come into contact, they continue to behave as if they are still connected or correlated, even when they're separated across space and time. And did a number of experiments to prove them, and to put it very crudely, they literally just got some photons, got them to go together, and then when they were separate, observed their behavior, and they found that when you change the spin of one, the other would also change spin, as if it was connected to the other one. Now, a number of physicists, major physicists, not just kind of people on the outskirts of the discipline, but people right at the hardcore of the major paradigm-shifting findings of quantum mechanics, have realized that there are huge philosophical implications of these findings, and that they challenge our conventional assumptions about physical reality in fundamental ways. One of them is Dr. David Bohm, who passed away recently, who used to be at Birkbeck College. And he worked with Albert Einstein at Princeton University. And he basically said that what this means is that everything in the universe seems to be in a kind of total rapport, so that whatever happens is related to everything else, the idea of non-locality. Quantum physicists take non-locality for granted. It's a normal part of the way they do things. But it hasn't, the findings of quantum physics have not translated into other spheres of our understanding of how the world works. Another famous physicist by the name of Wolfgang Pauli, who received a Nobel laureate for discovering the exclusion principle, he also agreed that the Bell theorem did indeed imply that the universe is fundamentally interconnected across space-time. Another physicist, if you want to read more about this issue, Dr. Fritjof Capra, who wrote about this specifically, he wrote a book called The Tale of Physics. Again, it's a best-selling book. Millions of people have read this book. He argued that the findings of quantum physics correlate closely to descriptions of reality recorded by Eastern mystics. So these are fundamental paradigm shifts taking place across disciplines that we don't even know about, we don't even hear about. But they're changing the way that we need to think about the world. They're showing that the world is not just this fragmented, collection of competitive materialistic entities scrambling over resources. The shift that is taking place in the social and physical sciences suggests that we are creatures whose survival as a species does indeed depend on mutual cooperation, on harmony, on respect for our environment and for one another, on the recognition of ethical and spiritual values that see more to life than merely unlimited materialistic self-gratification, but seek joy in simply being with one another in a world of beauty and wonder. This paradigm shift clearly has huge implications. It means that behaving less materialistically, with more balance, in tune with our environment, on the basis of values like social justice and compassion, all of this actually represents a way of life that is in harmony with life and nature, that indeed truly reflects our relationship to reality. And the good news is that millions of people around the world are waking up to this. It's up to us to take this message and communicate it to our friends, to our families, to our work colleagues, and to let that message spread so that it coheres into not just a paradigm shift in our minds, but into real social